even if the Shigo cut is helping 60% of the time, how often do you make proper pruning cuts? I teach my students in A&M, there's textbook pruning, then there's real world pruning, right? So we don't always, even if it's a true branch, don't always make proper pruning cuts. But I can explain it without showing it to you. Live oaks do not have, there we go, do not have a lot of true branches. They're one of the trees that are decurrent, that have a wide spreading canopy, that tend to abort the terminal bud, that would give them apical dominance, like a sweet gum or something, and then have small branches off the side. They tend to cause lots of codominant stems. And when we were looking in live oaks, the reason it took so long is it took me forever to find one true branch in the canopy. Almost all of the connections were codominant stems. And so you can't make a natural target pruning cut on a codominant stem because it doesn't have a branch collar and the piths are connected and the aspect ratio is almost 1-to-1 in this case. So another good reason for pruning, because you realize that some or most of those connections, those stem connections, are probably codominant stems and not branches. So anyway, I hope haven't added more controversy. Maybe you made it through the research, so congratulate yourselves on that. But to give you some information on how we got to where we are on this debate about pruning paints, and it's still, the research is not cut and dried, as you'd like to say as a researcher, our research changed the world. It was cut and dried. Still not cut and dry, so making that decision yourself on what's the best way to manage infectious diseases if you're dealing with those in your area. You may be in an area where you're not, and that's not a concern, but at least to give you some information on using pruning paints for infectious diseases. So thank you very much for your attention, and I guess while we're switching to it, if someone has questions, do I have a couple minutes? I have 1 minute. Yes? My opinion is spray right after. That gets difficult. I even thought about developing some type of pole saw that has a spray can on the back of it, because you know what most people do. You prune the whole tree and then you go back and you try to find the places to paint. Well, there may be a 2-hour window there, and it only takes one beetle for that to happen. Now, at some period of time, we don't know exactly how long, that wound becomes sealed off enough that you wouldn't have to, about 3 days. If you hadn't painted it in 3 days, don't worry about it. But depending on the disease severity, how close they are, beetles flying, what time of year, you want to paint those immediately after. And then the next question is, how big? Small. Doesn't take a lot to attract a beetle. Visible. One that has saw marks on it or pruning cuts on it. The smaller it is, the less likely it is. It's all a matter of probability. And you probably prune lots of trees you hadn't painted and they didn't get infected. And we just try to get to zero probability as close as we can, but we won't. Do I have time for one more? Yes?
Just for oak wilt or other?
Oak wilt, Dutch elm disease. If you've got other infectious pathogens that are being carried by insect vectors or that are wind-blown long distances, depending upon your area. So this research was just on oak wilt, but some of it transfers to others. So anyway, I better let the next speaker. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.